Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video I would like to take a look at why a lot of mechanics in Star Citizen are based on a beam and whether that might change in the future. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and the Armory. In case you don't know what the Armory is, it's a tool that I made for Star Citizen that allows you to check out stats for FPS gear and look up where to buy or loot it. You can check out the Armory using the link on the screen right now or in the description. So what is the problem? It seems that as new mechanics like salvage, repair, and medical are introduced, CIG seem to implement these new mechanics in the form of a beam. Now, for mining lasers and tractor beams, this kinda makes sense. But when we get into medical and repair and most recently structural salvage where beams were introduced instead of using the claw on the reclaimer, or cutters and explosives for the vulture, this doesn't entirely make sense. If you haven't looked into structural salvage yet, CIG have introduced it as two new modules for salvage ships. One beam or force field to break the ship apart and another to then salvage the separated chunks. Before I talk about why CIG are doing this, I want to take a detour to talk about whether this use of beams has some grounds in reality. And I specifically want to talk about two applications because they are very cool. The first one is called the jet injector. This was a device that used small streams of highly pressurized liquid to deliver medicine without the use of a needle. It was mostly used in the 60s and 70s for mass immunizations, especially by the military. But it very quickly fell out of use due to concerns like contamination of the medicine and spreading infections between patients. But there is some research ongoing to create a modern variant. This device is actually somewhat similar in function to medguns in Star Citizen, though it does have significantly less range. And the second one I wanted to mention is laser ablation, which is essentially using a laser to remove material from an object. As far as I know, this is frequently used to remove rust or paint from metal parts, as well as drilling and machining. For us, the former is more interesting as it achieves a similar result to hull scraping we see in salvage. Anyway, that was a short real-life lore segment. Now let's get back to Star Citizen. So why CIG using beams for everything? Well, simply put, it's easy. It's easy to implement because there is no need to develop complicated interactions between entities. For example, the reclaimer claw. To build the wreck-crushing mechanics, you would need to make changes to collisions, build material deformation, and possibly resolve some desync issues and many other things. It is a lot easier to just make the claw expand and add a fracture and collection field to it. But this is also easy in the way of accessibility. It takes an inexperienced player very little time to figure out the correct use of a beam, and their skill level can only rise quickly from there. Which, if you combine the simplicity of use and the simplicity of mechanics and implementation, should lead you to how CIG seems to be building out gameplay. Rather than building complex gameplay through complex mechanics, they layer simple mechanics to create complexity. This allows the players to choose their own level of complexity relevant to their skill level. For example, with mining, you can just go around, mine rocks, and sell the ore, and that's it. But if you feel like increasing the complexity of your gameplay, you can start adding modules and gadgets or experiment with refineries. They are trying to do the same thing with salvage at the moment. At first we only had hull scraping, then they added contracts and the ability to loot components and cargo. And now we have the first implementation of hull munching. To some extent we see this in delivery mission and retrieval missions as well. You can either act as a courier between 2 points, or take on a multi-stop route, or recover packages from potentially dangerous places. In conclusion, simple gameplay creates a low barrier of entry that enables players to test out various gameplay loops before they choose a path in the verse. Of course, this only deals with the skill side of things. Many loops require specific ships which create a monetary barrier. But this can be overcome with rentals or being part of a group. I think it's pretty reasonable to expect players with only a starter ship who, for example, want to break into mining to first join a mining crew and use that to save up for a mining ship or a rental. But following that, the player can make a choice on how complex they want their gameplay to be, and there is an assumption that the reward will scale with complexity. For example, mining with a fully upgraded prospector and using modules and gadgets will allow you to mine more difficult rocks, which in turn should increase profits. And with that being said, that's all for tonight. What do you think? Is layering simple gameplay the better approach, or should CIG create complex but single-layered gameplay? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.